back here on Lowcountry Money Talk. If you're just tuning in, well, we're really talking about the big question that we all have going into and being in retirement, which is my money going to last? So Phil Bloyd's helping us unpack that question. It's a lot to discuss.
Sure.
Thanks so much.
It's important, very important.
Very important.
Very
and this
concerning.
Is what you do every day. And all right, so we've talked a little bit about what's happening in the economy and some of the numbers that have recently come out in terms of inflation. So important factor, right? We're talking a little bit about how to know if you have enough to last or not. And of course, we talk about the stock market when we're talking about saving for retirement. It's a great plan for long-term investment and usually has higher returns than other options. So it's been a go-to. That being said, as we start getting older, we start getting into retirement, we start being more conservative.
Sure.
We start wondering more about how are we going to keep enough wealth. So we kind of are switching between accumulation and preservation.
Yes.
And that's the question is, what's the balance there?
Right. Well, first of all, I have a few, very few, that they don't want anything to do with the stock market. And, we have alternatives for that as well. But then on the other hand, I think for long-term growth, that's going to be our best average return over the years. The thing we have with retirees, they're like, well, I don't have enough longevity to make up huge losses in the stock market, see? So I like that balance of that Rule 100, Jessa. So if we take that age and let's say we have a retiree that's 70, maybe we look at 30% of that into the equity growth part.
Right.
30%, did I say 70? So 30% into the growth part. Okay, so we want 30% into the growth part, and we want to be more on preservation with the other 70.
Right.
So here's the thing. When the market does what it did last year and took that big sell-off, we don't want to be selling those positions at a low point. Okay, we can rearrange some things, but we don't want to be selling low.
Right.
We want to buy low,
right,
and we want to sell high. So unfortunately, the fear and greed that people have, the market moves on fear and greed, and you get that with the media, just ongoing. Scares you to death.
Yes, it does.
My wife's like, turn off that television. I don't want to hear it. I said, dear, even you turn it off, it's still going on.
It's happening, whether you're paying attention or not. Yeah.
Right. So we want to make sure, I think the best idea would make sure that we have the right exposure, but not, because if we say 30% and the market takes that downturn, we can take our withdrawals out of the preservation side.
Right.
And then we can leave those equities to realize whatever the average, the long-term average of the market.
So it's not an either or, is basically, you don't just flip from, accumulation phase to preservation phase. You're constantly making adjustments as you age, which is very easy to do by following that rule of 100, at least on paper. Now, what about potential consequences for people who are a little too conservative in their investment approach?
Yeah.
What do you tell those folks?
Well, first of all, there's two schools of thought on that. One person say, well, I have so much money that I don't really need it all. So I'm not going to take the risk because I don't need to. And I'm not going to argue against that maybe, but you may have another person with another school of thought that says, I have so much money, I don't need it, so I'm going to take more risk.
Why
so,
not?
There's a different ideology there. A lot of that depends on the individual, but as long as the person understands the risk that they're accepting, and I will show them, the preferred route, but it will end up what they want to do.
Right. Well, yeah. And everyone's got, like you said, their own comfort zone. And if you have an abundance going into retirement, you have the leeway to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And
that's guidance decisions.
And some of those are like, I know the market's down, it'll come back. And it's ideology, as long as that doesn't bother them. But sometimes people tell me one thing and I see another, and they're just freaking out about it. I'm like, well, you told me that, you were okay, then you wanted more exposure, but you can't deal with it. So obviously you're struggling within yourself. So we need to straighten that out.
You got to be able to sleep at night, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Phil, we got more questions to ask you. We're going to do that after the break. We hope you'll stick around and get those answers with us. We'll be right back.